speaker has done a lot of research on this, and we're going to try to keep this real simple. You know, sometimes as lawyers, you know, we can talk legalese and you guys don't get it, okay? We're going to try to keep this real simple. Our next attorney speaker has done a lot of research on this and give you a little idea of some case studies, okay, information, what can happen to these kids on the back end. Because one of the things you have to understand is that many times, and you're going to explore this, what if that fine can't be paid for whatever reason? You know, what's the long-term effect? So our next speaker is a dear friend. She's a criminal defense attorney out of New York. What I want her to do is address two issues. Number one, how did misconduct become criminalized and what kind of misconduct are we talking about? And number two, what are the impacts of school ticketing upon our children based on studies that she's seen? Ms. Schuman?
We're talking about what our children do through their growing pains, through their life experience, through their social interactions, maybe sometimes their lack of social interactions, but misconduct in school. And how it became criminalized was back in 1995 in response to a growing wave of juvenile crime, serious juvenile crime. The education law was codified to bring in two crimes: disruption of classroom and disruption of transportation. And the research that I've done makes it quite clear. Some of the people in positions of authority with whom I've spoken have made it quite clear that the original intent was truly to address that serious juvenile crime. But instead, as the years have gone by, our children are being ticketed for C misdemeanors. I really want to stress this. I've met people in the community, I've met police officers, I've met school administrators, and I've met people in general just saying it's only a C misdemeanor. But where I come from and every other jurisdiction in the United States, a misdemeanor is a misdemeanor, it's a crime, it stays on the record. So these children are getting C misdemeanor convictions before they even graduate high school. How does that set you up for life? So the codification of the education code brought in the C misdemeanors. Then of course you have Penal Code 42.01, which is disorderly conduct. And let's go back in time too. Disorderly conduct was originally intended to address disorder in public, to protect safety in public. And while courts across the state have interpreted classrooms as public areas, the fact is this is a catch-all just to charge our kids. When an 8-year-old is charged with disorderly conduct, I really lose my mind, because aren't 8-year-olds supposed to be disorderly? Isn't it up to us to set the models of behavior for them? But instead we're sending them to court. Now, prior to this year, children could be ticketed, but it is an arrest, and charged with a C misdemeanor, with ages going, the records and data show ages as young as 6 years old. There's even one school district in Texas where there's some data indicating that a 4-year-old was arrested at school, okay? This last session, the court changed that. You cannot be ticketed unless you are 7th grade and above. However, all those kids who had pending tickets before that, regardless of age, those cases are still pending. Those tickets are still pending, okay? Bring in some zero tolerance. The provisions for zero tolerance were adopted in a reactionary response to serious threats like Columbine, Colorado, and Pearl, Mississippi, where the life, safety of those children in school were threatened by serious offenders. But you know, there's schools that just for having those provisions in their handbooks get federal funding. But the intent of what zero tolerance was implemented to do versus the impact it's having is chilling. Because upon the discretion of an authority figure at school, your child can face criminal ticketing, criminal arrest. The effects of misconduct, approximately 250,000 Texas students are ticketed every year. Majority of them are for misconduct. 250,000 students a year across Texas for what should be handled at school. Every school district across the state usually has the code of conduct. They already have a disciplinary proceeding in place. What to do in the event that there's misconduct at school. Most of the schools have levels of misconduct, from minor to serious. And most of them will have that zero tolerance provision as well. Only in those serious offenses is there any indication that your child would be referred to the law enforcement authorities. When you're talking about the low-level misconduct for which our children are being ticketed, they don't give any notice to the parents that your child can get a ticket and have to appear in court and face a criminal conviction and a criminal record. That unless it is sealed, and unfortunately they're not, the law does allow for the sealing, but because of volume, because of backlog, because of procedure in the courtrooms, that's not happening on a readily basis. And so if those fines aren't paid or community service isn't performed, that's another failure on the part of that child, and of course faces consequence when they're 17. There could be a rearrest for that child. To get a record expunged is another proceeding which costs more money. So wherever you're looking, you have children who are just starting their life before graduation with a criminal record. I don't care how minor people say it is, it's a criminal record.
I have a question for the audience, and just raise your hand. If any of your children showed up at home right now with a ticket, how many of you would be able to hire an attorney to go to court with you? Just raise your hand. No hands are being raised. Okay, I asked you that because I want you to pay close attention to this very next speaker, because she is a part of the Earl Carl Institute at Thurgood Marshall School of Law. They have a program over there that helps you get representation when you're faced with these kind of situations. And trust me, can we all agree right now these are some very serious situations? Okay, good stuff. Then I'm going to ask our next speaker to go ahead from this point and take over and tell you what she's doing, how she's doing it, and what kind of issues she faces down in the courtroom with the judges when she's trying to do it. I'll turn the mic over now to Ms. Sarah Guillory, attorney and director of the Earl Carl Institute at Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
The young man was, as I recall, 11 years old. We went to court, didn't meet with the judge, but I met with the prosecutor. And we came back out to wait till we got paperwork completed. We had worked out something for a deferred adjudication, which I'll talk about in more detail. But as we were sitting right outside the courthouse door, I'll never forget, this young man looked at me and he says, "I guess now I'm a criminal." And I will remember that as one of the most heartbreaking moments of my 20-plus year career as an attorney. So when I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, I thought it was something that we wanted to at least provide education about. And so we did that. And then we applied for a grant from the Texas Bar Foundation, and we received a grant to actually handle some of these cases. Because there was only one other organization in the state that was handling these cases, and they were handling for children with disabilities. We wanted to handle it for minority children because there is such a disproportionate number of referrals for our students, and especially young black males. Now you need to keep in mind that these cases, most of these tickets are discretionary, which means the school doesn't have to issue it. 97% of the tickets are discretionary. The ones that are mandatory that we all understand, weapons, drugs, we understand that. Right. But answering back at the teacher because you've asked to go to the restroom 3 times. Failing to throw out your gun. Talking too loud in class. My little guy that I talked about my first case, he had made a joke at the expense of the teacher. Instead of going to stay after school, he ended up sitting in the courtroom asking, was he not a criminal? Wow. And so there are some issues that are legitimately need to be addressed, but there are some issues that should be addressed.